Okay, Precal, I'm going to go over the answers to Chapter 6. There's also just a photograph of it if you just want to look at them and check your answers before. So, first, it asks you to convert radians to degrees. Remember that when you want to convert radian to degrees, you want your radians to cancel out. So we take our 4 pi over 7 and we multiply it by 180 over pi. 180 and pi are equal, so we're just multiplying by 1, and we have the radian measure on the bottom, and we have the degree measure on the top. And when you just put that in a calculator and work it out, the pi's cancel, and you get 102 and 6/7. So you don't have to worry, this is multiple choice, so you can just put it in a calculator and get that number and round it. When we do the opposite, when we want to change degrees to radians, remember we want the degrees to cancel out. So we put the 180 on the bottom so that those degrees will cancel. And again, we just simplify as much as we can. I just did 335 times pi, and then I divided that number times 180. Over here, it asks us which is larger. So all I did was change, I picked one and I changed this to degrees because those are easier to compare. So I used the same method I used up here where I multiplied times pi 180 over pi. And I found that this is equal to 128, which is bigger than 125. So that's the bigger one. Please keep in mind that this study guide actually goes over all of Chapter 6 and not all of it will be on the exam. Especially problems like number 4 are a little more involved than we can actually do on the exam. So there will be shorter versions of this. But if you're given sine and cosine and asked to find the other 4 trig functions, you just remember that this 1/3 is opposite over hypotenuse. This square root of 7 over 3 is adjacent over hypotenuse. So we already have opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse, the 3 sides. So to get tangent, that's opposite over adjacent. 1 over square root of 7. Remember, the back of the book always rationalizes that, so they would have written it this way, but those are equivalent answers. For secant, remember you just flip your cosine, so I just go to the cosine they gave me and I flip it over. This is the rationalized version, in case you were wondering. For cosecant, you just flip the sine, and for cotangent, you just flip the tangent. Here they gave us a little less. We were just given the sine and asked to find the other 5 trig functions. So this time I have opposite and hypotenuse, but I don't have adjacent. So I just used my Pythagorean theorem. So I did a squared plus b squared, that's the other side, and then 16 is my hypotenuse squared. So I just worked that little equation out, and I got 3 here, square root of 3 squared is 3, subtracted that from both sides, so x squared is 13, which means x is the square root of 13. And now that I know that this is my adjacent, I just plug it in. So cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. There's my adjacent. My hypotenuse I got from right here. Tangent is opposite over adjacent. Cosecant is where you flip the sine over. Secant is where you flip over the cosine. And then I wrote tangent twice. Sorry, that's supposed to be cotangent, is where I just flip over the tangent. Here we used the unit circle when we originally did this chapter, but we won't be doing that on the exam. On the exam, you'll have a calculator and you'll be encouraged to use it. So this would just be typing things in. The cosine of 60 degrees, you just type it in a calculator. Make sure your calculator is in degrees when you type it in. That means for one like this, where we're given radians, you can either change your calculator to radians and just type it in that way, or you can change pi over 4 into degrees so that you can put it into your calculator tan of 45 degrees. Again, here, if it gives it to you in radians, then you're either going to have to change it to degrees, or you're going to have to change your calculator to radians. But it's just typing it in a calculator for all of these answers, and that's all we talked about in Chapter 6. If you'd like to know the most important things from this section, it would be really the sine and cosine bits. The unit circle is less important, especially since it's just punching things into a calculator. If you have any questions about the Chapter 6 material, please let me know. We skipped Chapter 7, and then my next explanation of the answers will be from Chapter 8.